Welcome back and thanks for watching. I really do appreciate it. So please like and share, and if you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, go ahead. I really do appreciate it. I really am trying to grow this into a bigger channel than what it is. Atlas is here. We're going to get that put in. I've got to build complete cross members, bushings, everything with that. So that takes a little bit of time. Plus, you also have to do shifters and kind of get the tunnel to work right. Before I throw that in, 4 times I think is what it took, I'm going to put the 14 bolt rear axle in this. Now, I'm not going to focus a lot on the Grizzly locker I installed in it because we've done lockers on other videos and no point in doing that again. We are going to do a little bit of focus on the disc brake conversion on the outside and talk about getting the purchase line, things like that. But once this 14 bolt is literally out of my way, I'm tripping over it for the last month while I've been cleaning it up, then we'll go ahead and get the Atlas rolling. Currently this differential is fully assembled other than the pads that will mate to the leaf springs. I am going to have to pull everything from the rotors out in order to install this housing. These brackets, no matter what kind of disc brake conversion you're doing, these are probably the most important part. Now this bracket, you can see has a brake in it. That way it hangs the caliper centered correctly. Some of these will have a straight piece and then just have spacers or pieces of tube welded in so that it brings it out to the correct place. I did this like the front. I set everything on jack stands without anything welded. Once I had the pinion height where I wanted under load, I welded just the areas I could get to. Once I had the inside and outside with where I could get to, then I pull all the U-bolts and everything back off and I finish weld it. And you can see here I've bolted it all together after I painted it. I still have some room on those threads, which I think I'm going to need because I think I'm going to have to use that to adjust the height. One little critical thing you do have to keep in mind is make sure that you have room on your hanger to run your caliper pin through. I actually had to drill a second set of holes in this set to clear the leaf spring. Once you get the hubs torqued back where they're supposed to be and the rotors all on and in place, clean off the hub face and the axle face real good. Very, very thin coat of silicone. Put the bolts in. Once I have all the bolts in, I kind of lightly torque them with that little DeWalt impactor that I use a lot. And then I let that silicone dry or cure. Once it's cured, the axles tend never to leak. So that's just kind of my technique. And when I tighten them when they're cured, another place for the torque wrench. Caliper hanger's done. I've got some new GM calipers. Now I used later than 1984. The hose is a little bit different. And the pads you got to watch. Don't get the really thick pads because they won't fit. But just mounted those up. And I'm using original equipment GM brake lines. I had to put a slight bend in them. But once I plumb everything, these should work just fine. Well, the Atlas showed up and it was just like Christmas at my house. Couldn't wait to get this thing out of the package and setting on the table and ready to install. It has a couple positions for the clocking ring on the NV4500, so got a few choices there. And you can see it is a 3/8-to-1 unit. I did go ahead and order this with a vehicle speed sensor just in case I ended up using an actual input and I didn't like the GPS speedometer in this one, but we'll see. And this should bolt directly to the existing adapter on the back of the NV4500. Atlas did tell me that they NV4500s and 700R4s won't really interchange with other stuff that easily, so glad they called. I'm glad we got the stuff that looks like it's going to work. All right, the first time I'm going in, I'm just going to use bolts to mount it, I'm going to get it as flush as I can with the bottom of the frame and kind of mark where I need to start building the cross member, cutting out the old stuff, and welding some tabs in. Have to do a little trimming here to make sure the front drive shaft will go out. Transfer case back in, time number 2. You can see on this how close I got it to the body and how flat I got it. Now this tab I've lined up with the original cross member. I'll have to drill a hole, and then the bolt holes will line up with the bushing. I also cut out the bottom of this side of the cross member. Now the other side I didn't have to cut the bottom out. You only need to do that with one side, but I lined this tab up and drilled that hole as well. It's really hard to see up inside the frame rail while I'm kind of doing some of this, and I know this is something that gets missed a lot, is how to do bushings. Because if you try to build a cross member and then weld it in later, they just don't fit right. So this is how I'm going to do it. First of all, you have a piece of 2-inch 250 wall tube, and I use DOM. It's just leftovers from other stuff. And then you can buy, they're basically the same thing as leaf spring bushings. They have an internal sleeve. Now I'm using 9/16 just like I did on the engine mounts. And I try to match the engine mounts with the transmission mounts because it shares torque that way. You have less twisting, less chance of breaking things like transmissions. So first thing I'm going to do is assemble this bushing into the DOM tube. Okay, so I have the bushing assembled. Now, something I use quite often is, and this is the Synergies version of it, but this is that really greasy, goopy, water-resistant lube for like leaf springs and track bushings, things like that. Well, use this on these too, because it will definitely save you headaches in the long run with moisture getting in. Plus, it makes putting these bushings together and taking them apart a lot easier. So, bushing assembled. Tab with my 9/16 bolt. Second tab. Now, once you have this is actually not the size I'm using, but same kind of thing. When I cut my piece of square tube I'm using for the cross member, I can just tack it to this and then drop it back out. So first thing I do is I set my tabs into the frame and I'll tack weld them. The next part of that is I will cut a piece of tube and shape it so it's the right length across, and then I will quickly tack it to this because you don't want to weld it with your bushing and you'll ruin the bushing. Now they do make slugs that you can put in these, and then you don't have to worry about getting the bushing in or out until your final assembly. But once this is tack welded on, you pull it apart, take your bolt out, disassemble your bushing, finish burning your tabs into the frame. Once your bushings are out, then you can fully weld your tube on. And then once that's done, you can put your bushing back in. That way they'll fit right when you're done. You don't have to worry about, oops, I mismeasured. Ask me how I know. I'm using 1.5" heavy wall square tube, and I'm cutting it a little longer than I really need it because I'm going to shape it around the front output shaft and then I have to cut the little notches in it. I cut a couple notches in the cross member to get around the transfer case, then put the bushing in the frame, and then I start forming this cross member. Once it's formed, then I start welding everything together with the bushings out of it. Once it all cools down, I put the bushings back in and then install it to the frame, and now the transfer case is going to go in again, and I can start actually building the mounts for the cross member. Okay, now mounting the transfer case in yet again. I make sure I'm really exactly where I want it, because now it gets critical. I am building the mount for the transmission adapter to the cross member, and then the transfer case to that cross member. You can see here I'm cutting a piece of 1/4 inch angle, which once this is cut and sized right, I go ahead and drill it to mate to the transmission adapter. Then I can line it up and even it out, and I will spot weld it, actually a little more than spot weld on this one, but I weld it in. Then I build the same type of thing on the transfer case, which will keep that transfer case from twisting. It also shares the load so the transmission mount doesn't take all of it. Once everything's all spotted in, I pull this whole mount out and burn everything together on the workbench. Just as a side note, you notice I did not pull the bushings out of the cross member. I'm not welding close enough to them to get them hot. I'll pull them out again here shortly after I recheck this to make sure it fits correctly. Really nice doing all the welding on the bench, because you can turn it over, position it, make all your welds look a lot nicer, clean it up as you need to go. It's a lot easier than welding it while it's in the vehicle. You can see that was kind of a long clip, but there is quite a bit of welding involved with one of these. Okay, this is going to take a little while to cool. I got it pretty hot, so I took the time and cleaned up a few of the areas, knocked that corner off of that transfer case side of the mount, pulled the bushings, primed it, painted it, actually a couple coats of paint, and now start some reassembly. Don't forget to add that really thick lube on both inner and outer parts of that bushing. It helps keep water out. You will thank yourself later when you have to take it apart. All right, now I think I'm going in for the last time. So now I will take these studs that Atlas gave me, instead of just putting them in finger tight. I pull them all out, Loctite them, put them in, snug them up like you're supposed to. Now I put the transfer case in, I put the correct nuts in, I snug them up and then torque them, because hopefully I'm not going to pull this back out. 3 or 4 times is about enough. Yay! Transfer case is fully installed. Makes me very happy. You can see where it goes around the front output shaft. You can see here how level it is with the frame, and that tail shaft on that transfer case I strongly recommend. It'll save you a lot of headaches in the future. I filled it up and put that zip tie on, and that'll just tell you where your level's supposed to be so you know if it's ever low. More rattle canning. I got to get the windshield frame and the interior done so I can work on the tunnel with this transfer case in. And with the interior painted, I am now ready to work on the transfer case tunnel. The tunnel was a little small for the NV4500 shifter, so I had to make that hole bigger. And then I just cut out the area I needed for the transfer case shifter. That scrap metal I had from the FC trailer fenders that I used on it, I'm now using to make patch panels for the shift tunnel. The original transfer case shifters were on the right side, and I'm just going to patch these holes. I'm not going to get too crazy about the fit and finish, but make them look at least decent. Once these are all done, I'll paint and install the tunnel so that I'm ready to build the Atlas side of the shifter. You can see that trailer fender profile I'm using. It cut it out and fit it up, and then I cut the little side pieces out of that piece of trailer, and I welded them from the inside so that it had a little bit cleaner look. Once I got everything fit, I, of course, install it, make sure everything lines up right. And then next step, of course, drill the holes to mount it, prime it, paint it, and will be installed for the final version. The Atlas shift boots really didn't fit very well. I ordered these online. These are a little bit larger shift boot. And also, while I had all this metal out, I went ahead and patched the original winch hole. And you can see the wire running in there. We'll be getting to that next. $3,400 and 32 weeks later, the Atlas leaks. We'll fix that later. On to some continued assembly. Now that the windshield frame is completely painted and the interior is painted, I went ahead and reassembled all the pieces that go onto this windshield frame, including the windshield laydown brackets. There's a bunch of holes I don't even know what they went to. And then I have some electric wiper motors that I bolted into this. Now they have independent switches, so I'll have a switch on the dash to turn them both on if I want, or I can shut one off from the inside depending on how they're timed. Another little quick note is that whelping on those windshield laydown brackets, I just cut a piece of radiator hose for that. The factory MV4500 shift boot didn't work so well. I got a shift boot for a Kenworth. It seemed to fit really well and kind of tie everything in. Shift handles on. I think I'm about ready for dash work now. Building this dash is going to take some time, so we're going to do that on another video. I'm going to change gears here for a little bit and do something that doesn't take quite as much gray matter to do. The Chevy truck that I pulled this NV4500 out of and the rear end out of, it also had a gooseneck trailer hitch. So I thought it would be a really cool upgrade to see if I can make that gooseneck fit the 715 Army truck. Then I can pull my gooseneck trailer with this truck as well as my Dirty Max. Okay, first thing, wire wheel all the rust I can off of this old gooseneck hitch. Then I got to cut a couple of angle iron brackets, which is just 1/4 inch angle iron. These will lay on the frame, and then the original mounting assembly will tie into those. These are the original mounting brackets. After I cleaned those up, I put everything together and set the angle brackets on the top of the frame, set the hitch in there, then bolted the angle brackets to the frame. You can see the bolts on the inside and the bracket coming underneath. And this is it from the outside. Once I had it all in there intact, I pull everything out and a welding we will go. Even though I cleaned what I could off this metal, it's still pretty pitted and rusty. And I've found if you run 2 passes over rusty metal, the first pass burns whatever rust is in there out. The second pass really lays down a nice bead. So I'm not a welder, but that seems to really work good for me. I used that rusty metal primer before I painted this and then installed it. Now the cool part of this little add-on is the hole in the bed. Now you remember there was a hole in the bed where an old fire pump went through, so I made sure to cut the hole the same size, and I used that original piece of metal as the patch for that hole in the back of the bed where that pump went. I think this worked out a lot better than trying to make a patch, so there you go. I also added this plastic coated chain as a safety chain because I didn't want to drill holes in the bed. That's going to do it for this video. Got a lot accomplished. Transfer case in, rear ends in, and this 715 will sit on the ground without the lift now. So huge gains on that. I've got a ton of stuff still to do on it, and we'll keep going. The rest of this video is part of the annual Rock Junction off-road event here in Grand Junction, which is my hometown. So I do spend quite a bit of time with this event. So thanks again for watching, and like, share, subscribe, throw some comments in. See you next time. Straight there, your rear tires are lined up really good over here. Fine. Hold that line. Perfect. Same thing, go on the top of that rock. It'll come up. Perfect. Keep coming. forward. Keep coming. Keep coming. It'll pivot you around. Your wheelbase is an advantage here. You can almost get an idea on camera how steep it is when you have one behind the other up. So, you know, on film it's never as cool as it is in real life. Pretty hard there. Easy peasy. Let go of the seat yet? Easy. That's a wrap.